I want to return to what I said in my opening statement and commend you for your work to try to accelerate timelines for production of munitions. I know you and a lot of others have really been rolling up your sleeves and working long hours, but I think you'd agree that we're still not producing enough of what we need fast enough. That's both in our Army ammunition plants and the industrial base. I've dug into the tables behind the budget request. It's a shocking timeline, really, in some of these cases. Basic munitions, not ones that are complicated or advanced, like artillery shells, can take up to 2 to 3 years to produce. Can you just give us a general sense of why that is? I mean, we built the Pentagon in less time than it takes to make basic artillery shells today. So what's up with that?
So, Senator, the actual time, I believe the timelines reflected in the formal budget documents are, I guess I would say those are the traditional timelines that assume a lengthy contracting process, followed by, a staggered, sometimes slow on purpose to maintain level workload at the factory approach. So for conventional munitions, I can tell you that artillery shells, for example, it takes about a month to get the steel. Now there's always a flow of steel, but about a month to get the steel. That steel is only at Scranton Army Ammunition Plant for about 3 days. Then it goes to Iowa Army Ammunition Plant for load assemble pack, which also only takes about a week. So when we're going as fast as we can, like we are right now, those timelines can be faster. However, sir, right now, as you mentioned, the issue is capacity, not timeline. On precision munitions, your point is very well taken and still very much the case. So advanced munitions, Patriots, sometimes even Gimlers, things with seekers or advanced electronics, we are still, sir, in those, at times, 1 to 2 year timelines, but trying to go faster right now.
So thank you for that, and I probably want to continue that distinction. And another distinction I want to drill down on is what you said about contracting processes or timelines. I view those as bureaucratic constraints. Those are Gordian knots. I think, in my opinion, Gordian knots exist to be cut. In many cases, a sword, or at least this Congress, can be the sword. Then there's actual real-world constraints on the availability of certain inputs, whether it's steel, energetics, chips, what have you. Let's focus on that area first. What are the single worst bottlenecks we face in the real world constraints about these munitions? Because again, we're not talking about an aircraft carrier or stealth fighter. We're talking about in what are most cases are man portable munitions. But what are the concrete real world bottlenecks that the Army is facing right now?
Yes, sir. So I think if we're talking about precision munitions, often it is the sensitive electronic components, so computer chips and everything behind them that leads to some of those timelines. So if you trace back the original sources, that's where some of that comes from. Also, of course, our systems do have sophisticated systems to make them safer than what the Russians might produce or exportable. That also adds time. But most often it is the electronic components that take the most time, probably followed by solid rocket motors for a lot of our munitions that are rockets or missiles. The other elements are explosives and such really are the shorter poles in the tent.
Okay. And what are the best ways this committee and this Congress can provide the Army with ways to reduce those timelines, to open up those bottlenecks?
Yes, sir. So first of all, the most economically efficient way to make a production line better is to buy more. So that way you let the market do its thing, and it downstream suppliers get better. It helps the whole system. So that's number one. And thank you for your support on all of that. Number two, and thank you for the support last year, is multi-year techniques like multi-year procurement and advanced procurement. I think when we testified last year, we were exploring the ideas of doing those things for munitions. They hadn't been done before. We're doing them now. And making that normal, not an exception, will be vital, sir. So we have to get that right. One other leg in the stool would be, over time, working on continued, for example, Defense Production Act investments. So that is the tool the department has to go way down in the supply chain and directly invest in companies, often small ones at the third and fourth tier. Congress provided very generous additional DPA Title III funding last year. I think we're putting it to great work. I think we did it in the Cold War at a much larger scale, and I think that's a model for how, with the right authorities and the right money in the right place, we can be better prepared next time, sir. So,
and to be clear on that, you're not talking about up here at the primes or assembling things, but at the subcontractor or maybe even the subcontractor doing fairly kind of basic inputs, let's call them valves or gaskets or what have you, reaching down to that level with DPA authorities.
Yes, sir, and that's a big difference with DPA. So really our normal input is at the top with the prime, and you hope that funding flows down and goodness of a production line gets down to those suppliers. DPA lets us go directly at some of those subs, which are often actually the most weak points. It's not the bigs. It's the sub-tier contractors.
Yeah. And oftentimes those subcontractors, one or two levels down, are providing those inputs for multiple primes or multiple different weapon systems. So there's a bottleneck there as well, right?
Yes, sir. In many cases, and we've got this now, I think we've got a much better handle on mapping our own supply chains from the government side. We see those overlaps that industry might not see because they're looking at their supply chain, not the national supply chains.
One final question about inputs drawing from the partner. Are you aware of Nammo's challenges in expanding in central Norway?
Not specifically, sir.
Their CEO said a couple of weeks ago that they would like to expand. Obviously, they're producing a lot of munitions that are in very high demand in Ukraine, but there is no electricity available in central Norway because all of the excess capacity is going to power servers for TikTok videos. He said they literally can't make more munition shells because of cat videos. Are you aware of any constraints on either our Army ammunition plants or in the defense industrial base because of electricity or other power inputs?
I'm not, sir. I believe we have other challenges. Some of I've mentioned and others, but I've definitely not heard that one. Not in the United States.
The Nammo CEO said he wouldn't have even put it past TikTok and the Chinese to specifically have cited their cat videos next to Nammo's production facility in central Norway. All right, I have more specific questions I'll save for a second round.
Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Rainey, on several occasions, this committee has